In this lecture, I'm going to try to get the exhaust and the fenders done. I think the muffler here is going to be a lot of work, and I have a feeling that I won't be able to get to the fenders. So I'm going to just jump in here and get started. So let's link select just the exhaust and hide everything else and zoom in on this. I'm going to put this on solid in the viewport shading. And one of the first things I want to do is delete this face because we don't really need it. I'm going to start by unwrapping this circle because really we just need to do this once. So this inner circle right here, just going to hit unwrap. And now that's done. Just scale it down, grab it, move it off to the side somewhere. Now I can actually hide it. Don't need to see it. Let's go back to the default, and the first step for unwrapping this is I need to separate this problematic side here. There's two sides that are problems. So if you notice, if I look at this straight on in right ortho view, I get a pretty clear shot of this. So what I want to do is I want to use a project from view, but only on this side where the problematic holes are facing. So what I'm going to do is select an edge around here. Make sure that none of the edges that I select actually intersect with any of the circles, and basically surround this whole shape. See, it intersects right there, so I need to go a little bit further out. So make sure you surround this whole shape with edges like this. I can't come in here because it intersects with that circle. Do the same thing on both sides. Go ahead and mark that as a seam, and then Control 3 to look at the other side. So I got to come all the way out here. And I think I can go straight down this line here. But I got to go all the way down here. Just like that. Let's go ahead and mark that as a seam. Just for the time being, I want to actually hide those faces. We're gonna show them again later. But the way that I'm going to handle this is I'm going to link select this, and I'm going to delimit by seam. So by default, this is usually turned off. So if you didn't have your delimiter turned on, it would select everything. But you can tell it to stop link selecting if you encounter a seam by just clicking on seam over here. Now I can separate this selection. That's going to create a new object out of that face. Let's go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So link select that. My seam is still set up on the delimiter, so all I need to do is separate that selection. I'm going to jump out to object mode and just hide both of these in object mode. That way I don't have to deal with hiding and unhiding it while I work over here. Let's go to front view and notice that basically this is where the tank is and this is the exhaust, right? So in front view, we can get a clear shot of the part that would be best for marking a seam. So if I put this on edge selection, I think this is going to be the best place to put our seam. And again, that's because it's closest to the tank. It's most likely to be hidden by the body of the tank. You're probably going to catch a glimpse of it mostly out here and up here. So I think that's probably the best place to put our seam. So let's go ahead and mark that. Now, everything that you see here is quads, so I can probably get away with using the Follow Active Quads tool. But I'm going to do this in probably back ortho. So I'll go ahead and mark one of these faces as an active selection, and then select all. Let's jump over to our UV editing window, and basically from here, we'll follow all the active quads. First thing I want to do is reset, and then follow active quads. I don't really like this pattern that I ended up with, so what I'm going to do is play around with the tool shelf over here. It's on length average right now. Let's try it on length. Aha, that fixes that problem. So now using island selection, select all of this and pack islands. I want to see this with the checkerboard pattern, so select UV grid. And this is what we have. I want to see side view so I can kind of balance out these checkerboarding. So I'll bet you if I put this on color grid, yeah, all of the letters and numbers are turned sideways. So I think what I'm going to do is rotate this thing 90 degrees so that we can get this thing actually on grid. Looks like they're going in the right direction now, so that's good. Okay, so now I can scale this on the Y and hopefully fix some of this problem. But again, I got to go back to the side view to kind of get a good glimpse. So over here, scale Y, and I'm looking for squares. Probably should put this on UV grid. I think right about there. And I'm pretty happy with that. Let's pack this back down using the pack islands. I'm going to scale it down just a little bit more and grab it and move it off to the side. Let's go back to the default window and back to object mode so that we can unhide those faces. I actually want both of these faces to be joined together. So I'm going to Control J on just the faces, hide everything else, and go into edit mode on those. And look at the first one in right ortho view. I'm going to select any one of these faces and link select the rest. So you'll notice that it doesn't actually select anything over there. Now my plan is to use the project from view tool so that I can get a straight on view of this, but I'm kind of curious what this is going to look like if I just did a regular unwrap. So I'm going to go over there and try just unwrapping that first just to see what it looks like. So this is the problem that we're dealing with. It unwraps it, but it puts some massive distortion on those circles, and this is what I'm trying to avoid. So if I go to right ortho view, and instead of doing a regular unwrap, I do a project from view, this is what you see. Everything is nice and, at least the outside is nice and clean, and these are all perfect circles, which is a good start. The circles are not lined up perfectly, but this is a good start, so that's not bad. I have to be very careful not to scroll in or out. So all I really need to do is change to the other side. Control 3 will get me there. Right click on any one of those faces and link select the rest, and then do another U, project from view. It should be the exact same size as the other one. So if I select all, we have two of those, and they should be exactly the same size. The problem with this is if I try to rotate one of these, let's get a closer look here. I'm going to close some of these toolbars. And so let's say I go to island select on this and I start rotating it. Notice it leaves some of the geometry behind. You see these little specks down here? That's actually part of those circles. If you notice, let's take a closer look at some of the parts that are actually affected here. So like this region right here, okay? Let me zoom in really close to that so we can see what's going on. When I rotate this, it's leaving behind pieces of the geometry. And the parts of the geometry that it's actually leaving behind are these parts where these circles are overlapping. So before I actually rotate these, it'd probably be a good idea to fix this problem. So let me undo that. And we're going to select just one of these faces at a time. And we're going to work on those circle problems first. It's kind of a tedious job, but we should be able to do this. I'm going to use my edge selection tool and try to loop select this. And you'll see that it doesn't actually loop select very well. It doesn't loop select out here either. So, I'm kind of out of luck. I'm going to have to go in and manually select this. I can get a lot of it using this tool, but then I got to go and finish the job the hard way. This gets a little tricky in here, so I'm just going to do my best to kind of follow this shape around. I think that's it. I'm not sure, but if I grab this and move it, I should be able to center it like this, and you'll see that it's actually getting better because it's turning closer to that darker blue. And that's basically what we want anyway. I'm going to have to do the same thing with all of these circles, and I realize that this is a very tedious job, so I'm going to do this off camera. I'll do a couple of them on, but most of them are going to be off camera. So I'm just going to grab as much as I can with the lasso tool like this, and then the rest I'm going to have to manually select. This is another problematic one, so I'll go ahead and do this one on camera, and then after this the rest will be off. So the basic trick that I try to do is, get this whole area inside of here, and then this is where it gets tricky. You have to figure out where it goes out here like this. You just got to follow these lines very closely, and you can kind of resolve this. And it looks like I can't figure out what's going on here that easily, so I'm going to come in from the other side. I think I got it. If you grab this and it doesn't do what you think it's going to do, then obviously right click and try reselecting things and then grabbing it again. So sometimes it's a little trial and error. Okay, I've got all of the circles now configured correctly. There's a lot less stretching than there was before, but the two shapes are now still on top of each other. If I go into the island selection tool, you'll see that I can grab one or the other shape. They're not touching each other. And if I grab them and move them away, it doesn't leave any of the geometry behind like it did before. And I want to check both of those to make sure that they're both working exactly as they should. So if I grab this and move it over here, and grab that and move it over there, there's no geometry being left behind here. Now I can actually rotate these things and get them lined up with a grid. Ideally, I'd like to get this line absolutely perfect on grid. So I'm going to zoom in kind of close and I have to eyeball this, but that looks perfect. And I'll go and compare the other side and see what this looks like. Okay, so I got that one just right. Let's go ahead and repeat that with this piece over here. I'm going to get it kind of close and then zoom in closer. Okay, let's check the bottom. This one's off just a tiny little bit, so maybe right there. Let's go check the top. Okay, I got it that time. So now they're both perfect. I'm just going to go and grab these and move them close to each other. I don't think I'm going to get away with snapping these together. So, I mean, I could try, but I don't think so. So if I were to grab one of these and just kind of line it up with the other, you can see that they don't quite line up just right. So I'm going to leave them just like that. Let's go back to object mode and unhide the other objects. I'm going to join everything together. So select all, Control J. Let's go back into edit mode. Unhide everything else. Really all I'm interested right now is just this exhaust system. So I'm going to select all of that and hide everything else. And really what I want to do is use this island right here to kind of figure out how big to make these islands. So I'm going to grab these and bring them in a little bit closer. Let's zoom in. I'm going to scale them down so that the tops and the bottoms fit basically in that height right there. So scale it down just a little bit more. And I'm just using this as a guide. It's not going to stay here, So I'm just scaling it so that it fits nicely inside that area. So that's pretty good right there. I'm looking at the top here and the top there. It looks like it kind of fits inside that hole. This one's not lined up the same, but I mean, if I line this up, it would be pretty good. So both of those are pretty close. Of course, I'm not going to leave them over there. I'm going to move them off to the side. But I think what I'm going to do with these is stack them up like this. Now I can take all of this geometry here and move it off to the side. And actually this piece goes with it, so I'm going to grab that and bring it down here. I want to make sure that it's not intersecting with other pieces of geometry, so I'm going to select all of this and just unhide everything. And it is on top of some other geometry, so I'm going to grab all of that and move it somewhere else. I don't really care where, I'll just throw it over here for now. Let's go ahead and associate that UV grid with this so we can see everything. And I don't really have enough time to do the fenders in this lecture. So let's see what's left here. So in the next lecture, I think I'll tackle the fenders and the tracks. I could probably handle all of that in one lecture. And then we'll follow that up with another lecture where we basically handle all of the wheels, and then we'll set up all our texture atlases. So we're looking at probably 2 more lectures, and then we're going to be done with this thing. So if you want to be a step ahead, go ahead and unwrap the fenders and the tracks if you haven't already. And then when you're done, I'll meet you in the next lecture.